Last week we talked about a woman's top 5 marital needs. This is from Willard Harley, who's a very notable counselor and guest speaker. I've got to meet him and his wife at a family seminar in San Antonio, Texas, along with Carl and Bakeen Faulkner. A lot of you may remember them. They were members of the church. What surprised me was that Willard Harley used more scripture in his presentation than the others. So even though he's not a member of the Church of Christ, I'll guarantee you that his principles come from the Bible. We covered the needs. This is from the most important need of a woman to starting in going in that order. Affection being the first, conversation, then honesty and openness, and financial support. We were on the discussing the financial support. Keep in mind that many of the things that I'm going to say go directly against what is happening in society today. More women than ever are in the workforce. Both the husband and the wife are in the workforce if there is a husband present in the home. And this creates some dilemmas, because I'm telling you, God created man and women different from each other. He did it for a purpose, but we sometimes don't realize that. We may go against what God has wanted, but sometimes we're going to pay the price. I talked about one of my sergeant majors at the University of Louisville and how his children were complaining that he wasn't at home. And they'd come home from high school and, he wasn't there. And he did come home finally. He started coming home every day that he could. And the boys didn't do anything other than just say hello when he walked in the door and went on to their rooms. And so he's like any good sergeant major. We're going to talk about this. I want to know why you were complaining that I'm not here to talk to you. Whenever you go off in your room, you don't say anything. And his boy's response was, "Yeah, Dad, but we know you're here if we need you." That shows a need for the children, if at all possible, to have a parent at home. It's not that they have to be there. It's that it's a comfort and security for them to be there. And so we need to look at the pros and the cons. Obviously, one of the reasons why both husbands and wives work when the children are still going to school is, we want a certain standard of living. It used to be if we were lucky, we would have one television set. Well, and that one was probably black and white. But now we have a television set in all the bedrooms as well as the living room, and maybe even one out by the pool. And we have to get jobs to support all that. A Chevrolet is not good enough anymore. We need a Lexus, or we need a Rolls Royce, or we need something else. Well, we're going to pay a price for that. Women do, to a degree, marry for money. They long for security. It's not always that they're looking for someone who's rich. They're looking for someone who can provide for them about the same level that their dads provided for them. Now, here's a cautionary tale that I learned with soldiers. You will not have the standard of living in the first 10 years of marriage that your parents had, most likely. It took them a long time to get all that furniture and get the other things that you have. I had soldiers they would get a bonus or some extra money, and they would go out and buy brand new furniture, a whole bedroom suit, a whole dining room suit. And then they'd come complaining to me, "I don't have any money." And so I'd ask them, "Well, what do you do?" And they told me, and I said, "I'm an officer. And I don't go out and buy a whole new thing. I go to garage sales. You can get perfectly good stuff at a lot of garage sales for a whole lot less. You cannot start out at the same standard of living that your parents were. You work your way up to that. I talked about movie stars. You know, we see them raising all these children, but they're successful movie stars, and they're going off to who knows where to film movies and stuff. They're not raising those children. Nannies are raising those children. They see their children every once in a while, but that's about it. I'm going to give you a dose of reality. There's a lot of females in the Army. I am not against females being in the Army. There are some women that I would follow into combat. But many of the women in the Army have children. We in the Army get called out on alerts, deployments, and things like that. Many times I would have 2-hour notice to report to MacDill, ready to go to a foreign country, not even knowing where I was going or when I was coming back. I could not have performed my duties if I had children to take care of at home. And many of the women today in the Army that have children, they rely on perhaps mothers or families or friends or something else. They do get called out. Some of them have to deploy. Some of them have gone to war for a year or more at a time, leaving their children behind. That's the price they pay. It's better if she can stay home and the husband can work. The second thing, many of the deployments that I went on because some of those who had children got left behind. So I got their deployments, which wasn't exactly fair. I'm sorry. But that's the way it is. I'll tell you what Willard Harley has concluded in his research. Number one, most married women resent having to work outside the home. When it's not a choice, when they feel like they have to, a lot of the time they resent it. They may do it. They may even do it without complaining. But there's still something internally that they don't like about it. Number two, women who earn more than their husbands, especially career women, wish they had the option to stay home and raise children. You cannot have it all. You can start out as a woman and be successful in a career and be going forward, but if that biological clock kicks in, there's going to have to be a decision made. She can't have children without putting herself in danger much past 40. So she's going to have to either revert back to being a mother or give that up for the most part. We're going to get on the opposite end of this when we get to domestic support for men. But the next one here for the women's needs, family commitment. And once again, we're going to butt heads with a message society is sending. All we have to do is look at today's television programs and advertisements that belittle men. If you haven't noticed, I want you to pay attention. How many advertisements show men as being useless or a problem or in the way or not that smart? The television programs do it too. There's a swelling number of households with absent or non-existent male figures. And figure out what society is trying to say about them is that they're not necessary. We're good for nothing. We're only a drain on women. Again, this is all a lie, and it goes against God's intentions for all of us in this world. God intended for the husband to be an active part of the family unit and be involved in raising his children. A man brings certain qualities to the marriage and to the raising of children, and a woman brings certain qualities. Children need a male figure in their homes. No matter what society says. I know it sometimes can't be helped, but we need to try to have it that way. I'm going to be a bit crass here, but recently I was watching a series of interviews with young women. These are like in the 18 to 24 age period, I would say. And they were complaining about men. One said, "The only thing men are interested in is what's between my legs." And then they switched to a man who responded, "If that's the only thing you have to offer, that's the only thing I'm interested in." And both those comments kind of point to the weaknesses that we have in our society right now and the home. I'm also going to say something that may hurt some sensitive people. It may be that the reason you are in this predicament is because of your stupid decisions. We don't want to hear that, but it's true. And when it comes to raising a family and having a household and doing those other things, sometimes we get the cart before the horse, but the problem is there's no getting the horse back in front of it anymore. It's the cart from there on out. That's why we have so many broken homes. That's why we have so many children that don't have the guidance that they need. Many women complain about the men in their lives as being the bad ones, and yet they're the ones who chased after the bad boys instead of looking for a man or a boy that treated them with respect and looked at them as they should. Some women are searching for the perfect man, meaning they have a list of unreasonable expectations in any man. Another one of these interviews, they were asking these women how much they expected their potential husbands to make annually. Many of them answered $150,000 minimum. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't know very many young men's jobs that start at $150,000. A lot of the time, you're lucky to get 30 to 40 nowadays. The kicker to that is, you're lucky to get a man who will get a job. Again, that's why a lot of the time there's problems. A woman will go after a man. She wants to be with him, but he won't support her. He wants her to support him while he goes out and does whatever. She's never going to be happy with that situation. That's just one of their unreasonable expectations. They'll have a whole list of these things. And part of that's going to be, well, I want a man who always puts me first. That's not how marriage works. And it's not 50-50. Sometimes it's 90-10 and 40-60. It's all over the board. It's whatever the situation depends on. Whoever is slacking, the other one's got to pick up that slack, and vice versa. You can't be looking for someone to meet your needs. You have to be looking for someone that you can meet their needs, and hopefully they will do that for you in return. Talked about a father being in the home. A father has a profound influence on his children. He brings a totally different perspective home than the mother, and that should balance the child's upbringing. We've already seen how important it is that the man take the lead in attending church. If the man is the spiritual leader of the home as God intended, most of the children will be faithful. Not all of them, but most of them. Other things that he's got to be doing with them, he's got to be eating with them, playing games, attending their sporting and scholastic events, reading to them, praying with them, and teaching them practical skills. How to fix things, how to change a car, change the oil in the car maybe. Those things that we have to do day in and day out. And guess what? We really need to be teaching our girls some of those things that have to do with machinery and tools, and we need to be teaching our boys how to do the laundry and cook. They both need to know all of those things. They need to know that you cannot put the bright reds along with the whites in a hot water washing machine. You're going to get an all pink wardrobe. And you're going to get in trouble with your wife. How many of you as parents, got the training manual for parenting before the first baby arrived? I don't see any hands going up out there. You know, truthfully, you did. I did. I just didn't recognize it. It's the Bible. It's not written like we normally see a how-to manual. It's more based on principles and laws and things like that. But if we truly study the Bible, it tells us how to raise children. It's up to us to take the principles and the concepts that are in the Bible and adapt them to everyday parenting. What are some of those principles and concepts? Number one, learn to be consistent. We as parents cannot let our feelings and emotions determine how we react to our children. Otherwise, we're going to do something we might regret when we discover that they put the water hose down the gas tank. Children need consistent boundaries. They need to know what will be tolerated and what will not be tolerated. They can't be changing, or the child won't know where they're at. There need to be consequences for going past those boundaries. Number two, learn how to punish properly. I expect that there's probably even some of you here who might believe that a child should never be spanked. I encourage you to read what the Bible has to say about that subject. Now, once again, society's been spreading lies about this subject. Society says that any form of spanking or physical punishment is abuse. That is simply not so. We all really know the difference between punishment and abuse. If you don't, come and talk to me about it. Little story here. A deputy went to a house and a woman had a 17-year-old daughter. And I mean, she had been lashing out at her mother. Her mother was only expecting reasonable things from her. There were no unreasonable expectations. And all this daughter did was lash back out and even physically hit her mother. In talking with the deputy said, "Well, I can't spank her. It's against the law." The deputy said, "No, it's not. Not until she's 18. Would you like for me to leave the room so that she can find that out?" I don't know if she did, but you see, that's the misconception that's preached in society. Here's one with my own daughter. I did spank her one day, and she got very upset about that. And she started making threats. Now, this is realistic. I said, "You know what? You're going to go to school tomorrow, and you're probably going to be thinking about this. And you're going to want to tell the teacher that I spanked you. But here's something for you to remember. You tell the teacher that, and she may report me to Children and Family Services. It won't make any difference. I will be removed or she will be removed until an investigation is completed. So you better think twice before you do that. Children and Family Services provides a necessary service because there are homes out there that do abuse their children unmercifully. But to apply punishment for the appropriate problem is not a sin nor abuse. We need to know that we need to be creative in punishment. And sometimes those can be far more effective than any others. We need to tailor the punishment to the age, the personality, or even the stubbornness of the child. Let me give you an example that I learned in the Army. When a soldier committed an offense and I had to punish him, I had to kind of look at what motivated that soldier. If I had a sergeant and he was concerned about his rank, his ego was tied up in that rank, I would do something to take his rank away from him. If I had a foot soldier who was there in the Army because he got 3 hots and a cot, as they would say, I would take his time away from him. Because anything else, if I took money from him, he didn't care. He was going to eat. He was going to have a place to sleep. But boy, if I took his weekend away from him, oh my goodness, message got there. You tailor the punishment to what motivates. I sometimes counsel parents about children and their discipline. And sometimes they can't quite come up with things, so I kind of give them some ideas. I've had multiple couples who say they had teens who would not get out of bed in the morning. They'd call them and call them and call them and couldn't get them up. I said, here's what you do. Go to Walmart, buy the biggest bag of marbles that you can possibly find. Put them in the freezer. Tell your child before you go to bed, you're going to give them one warning and you want them out of the bed. If you give them that one warning and they don't, you go to the freezer, you pull back the covers and you dump those marbles in with the child. Mattress stays dry. It's easier to pick up the marbles than it is water. And I will guarantee you they will come out of that bed. Some of the children of those parents have come up to me. What did you tell my parents? Because they knew it didn't come from them. But I'm telling you, it got some effective results. We've talked about phones and tablets taking control of children's lives. Well, maybe the punishment needs to be taking those away for a while. Or a bit more on the sadistic side, give them the phone and the tablet, but take away any way of charging them. That way they can see the power level going down. Be creative. You know, younger parents especially disagree on how to punish. And you should never disagree in front of the child about how to punish. Here's what you do. You tell the child, you did this, you know that was wrong. Your mother and I are going to discuss this, and we will tell you later what your punishment is. And sometimes that is the more effective punishment than anything else you could possibly do. They're sitting, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I go into that. Learn to reach an agreement with your spouse. Children are born manipulators. And if you don't believe that, you watch them. Watch a child go and ask a parent, can I go home with so-and-so? They'll ask the dad. Well, go ask your mother. You know, the dad will put it off because he didn't want to tell anything unless the mother's agreed. The child will go to the mother and say, Daddy said that I could go. Is it all right? You see, it kind of gets twisted. They're masters at work and words. They can put this past you. Control your anger. Never let anger determine how you react to your child's behavior. If you feel you're going to have trouble controlling your anger, step back and cool off before you do anything rash. So now let's talk about, if I can find it, they'll tell me. Oop. I don't know what happened to my slide. I'll have to give these to you. Number one need for men, sexual fulfillment. Probably this is one of the most common problems whenever it comes to the differences between men and women and how they relate or fail to relate to each other. I will tell you that it is the most common subject that I deal with when a man comes to me for counseling about something personal going on in his life. I'm going to use Willard Harley's first corollary here, but it's just another way of expressing what I've already expressed in this class. The typical wife doesn't understand her husband's deep need for sex any more than the typical husband understands his wife's deep need for affection. I think most women categorize their husband's sex drive as a want, not a need. They don't understand that his frequent touching, staring, and sexual advances are a sign that he needs something from his wife. When a man marries a woman, he usually assumes that she's going to be sexually interested in him as he is in her. He anticipates that she's going to meet his sexual needs. When this doesn't happen, there get to be problems. He's pledged to limit all his sexual experiences to this one woman, but his expectations aren't being met. This leads to a sometimes overwhelming frustration, as I've stated before, and he may not display it as frustration. It may come out as anger. If he's a committed Christian, he's going to try to make the best of it. And that's when his commitment is stronger than whatever his needs are. But this sets up a dangerous dilemma. He's being tempted by his desires, and yet he may be vulnerable to giving in to them. Some men are going to inevitably give in to them, whether it's a single time or an ongoing event. Even if he doesn't, other areas of his life are going to be significantly affected. He may plunge himself into work and spend as much time as possible away from home. He may turn to pornography to try to find some other outlet for his frustrations. He may become depressed, display a lack of patience, or have angry outbursts. Much of the time, this leads to resentment toward his wife, a danger that's warned about in Colossians 3:19. That reads, "Husbands, love your wives and do not be embittered toward them." If he resents his wife, he also loses respect for her, and it's going to be difficult for him to show her honor like 1 Peter 3:7 requires him to be. And even with all that, the wife may actually be oblivious that the problem even exists. If he's tried to convey his frustrations to her, but she's ignored or minimized his feelings, he's going to start shutting her out emotionally. He will stop trying to talk to her about it because he doesn't feel that she cares about what he needs. Now, I'm going to give a warning to you men out here that if you think the problem is totally yours, it may be that you're failing to meet her emotional needs, or you're oblivious to things like her workload or health issues. So you may be part of the problem. You know, for the men who look back on the 50s lifestyle of the wife stays home and the husband goes out and he comes home and she's got that hot meal, That's not always the case nowadays. You can't expect her to go out to the workforce and then come home and do all the other work that she had to do in the 50s lifestyle, and you just sit down in the easy chair. We're going to cover more about this later. I'll go back after we finish this, and we'll pick it up after we've covered some other subjects. A significant number of men wish that they didn't have a strong sex drive. They wish there was some way to suppress it. The fact that they crave sex creates a vicious cycle of temptation, guilt, and frustration. And adding to this are the lies, misconceptions, and avoidance of this subject in the church itself. Some Christians would completely ignore the subject if they could. I've been appalled at how little some married couples knew on their marriage night. Knowing what I knew, Debbie and I began to give one gift to all soon-to-be married individuals. It was called Intended for Pleasure. It was written by a husband and wife team called the Wheats. It was written about sex, but from a biblical point of view. It gave the mechanics, but it also gave the biblical principles with that. Several of those came back to us and said, "We are so glad that you gave us that book." We cannot ignore this. It's a part of life. It was created by God. It is not a sin as long as it's done within marriage between the man and the woman. God wants it to be pleasurable. He designed it also to produce children. Ask yourself, if God didn't create a strong sex drive in men, how many women would be how many children would be in the world? It might not be near as many, because men might not be inclined to have children if it weren't for that. Next, recreational companionship. Willard Harley lists this as the second most important need of man. This is a process of sharing common interests together as a couple. Whenever people are dating, they spend a lot of time with each other, and they want to gain their partner's attention. They're going to show interest in things just because they're with him or her. But they might not really be all that interested in them. Maybe the wife will go hunting with him, getting up at 4 a.m. and sitting in a freezing blind with no conversation. Or she'll get up and go out on the water fishing with him, even though she can't or won't bait a hook, can't stand to touch a fish, and is bored after 15 minutes of nothing biting. After marriage, this urge to participate begins to wane. The man may begin to wonder why she's changed, when in reality, she hasn't changed at all. You see, they haven't talked like we talked about. They haven't gotten to know the real likes and dislikes, everything about their partner. The opposite of this is the man who sits through several Hallmark or romance movies, feigning interest, even though he's bored to tears. Neither person should intentionally or unintentionally feign their interest in the other's activities just to spend time together or impress them. It's going to cause problems later on in the marriage. I told you about what Debbie and I did. She loves the beach. I love the beach. I love to fish. She loves to read. We would go to the beach. We would do what each one of us individually wanted to do, and then we got together and did talk to each other or just spent time with each other. And we spent time with the kids. Everybody did something they wanted to do. You may need to develop hobbies that both of you are interested in, just to have the time together. Maybe the man craves some activities with other men. Within reason, that's not necessarily a problem. But it becomes a problem if he starts spending more time with the men than he does with his wife. She's going to resent that, and rightfully so. If either the husband or the wife spends an inordinate amount of time with the same-sex activities, they're going to resent that time that's not spent with them. Remember, the couple that plays together stays together, as well as the couple that prays together stays together. Next, an attractive spouse. This subject is sure to provide some lively disagreements in some marriages, with finger pointing in all directions. But let's try to look at it objectively and fairly. Let's say Susie tends to gain weight quite easily and doesn't watch what she eats nor exercises. So as a result, she's put on about 80 pounds. Even she's not real happy with her appearance. But she wants to attract a husband, and she knows that not a lot of men necessarily might like someone like her. So she goes on a strict diet and an exercise program and loses 80 pounds. She gets a new hairdo, she buys some flattering clothes, and she ends up looking very attractive. She finds a husband, but immediately begins to gain all the weight back because she abandons all the things that kept it off. Her husband, Fred, has talked to her repeatedly about his disappointment in her weight gain, but she doesn't do anything about it. In fact, she responds with, "You ought to love me for who I am and accept me unconditionally. If you did that, I could lose the weight." When the marriage counselor brings it up to her, she discloses that she never told Fred about her previous weight issue, or the fact that she never intended to keep the weight off after she was married. She also depended on his commitment to the marriage to keep him in the marriage. Her response to the counselor was, "He just won't accept me for who I am. It isn't fair." Well, Fred then begins to make threats about separation or divorce. Susie gets livid. The counselor explains to him, marriage is a commitment to meeting your spouse's needs as well as getting your own needs met. She wanted Fred to make a good living, put her first, but she wasn't holding up her end of the bargain. In fact, she deceived him about the weight issue from the very beginning. The counselor tried to explain to him, this is a need for man. He wants an attractive wife. Finally, she got serious about it and began to do something. And he let up. He just needed to know she was trying her best to lose the weight. Now, I'm not going to try to justify some men's standards for beauty or sexiness. Most women will never look like supermodels, and most men truly, really don't want that, especially if they look at other characteristics of women, such as their personality, their heart, and their commitment to God. I can honestly say that I can look on social media at most of the influencers that we see today, and they're so popular, I would never in a million years want to be married to them. You can see their vanity. It's always a selfie. It's always, look at me. It's always, see how pretty I am. No, men don't want that, but they do want something reasonable. When we're talking about attractiveness, we're not talking about women being beauty queens. We're talking about remaining somewhat like the woman he married. After all, that's who he fell in love with. Visual stimulation often arouses a man sexually, and if the wife looks good, he's going to look at her often, and he will like what he sees. And here's a cautionary tale here. This is something else that God put in men. We keep trying to deny it. A man will look at an attractive woman, probably no matter who he is. That does not mean he wants her, that he's going to leave you for her, that she is a threat to you. He just looks. And if some of you women can grasp that, it may cut down on some of your concerns. If she doesn't look somewhat attractive to him, he's not going to look at her often. And even when he does, he's going to be repulsed by what he sees. Then he's going to actively look at other women. It's going to set up a series of negative interactions between the husband and the wife. Every time he looks, he's going to get an elbow or a slap or a nasty comment. We try to rationalize this subject by saying that it shouldn't matter that much to a man. But we're trying to deny something that's inherent in men, and it's not going to change. I dare you to look through history and see when all these principles that I'm talking about weren't prominent, even in the church. Women don't understand this because women don't look that much at appearance necessarily. Sometimes they're happy with a guy that's got a pot belly. They just want him to have a job, that he gives her security, and he loves her, shows her, fulfills her emotional needs. And that's good for some of us because we've been eating too much of her good cooking. Another factor that tends to enter in this is that many women think that their bodies are not very attractive, when in fact their husbands are perfectly happy with their wife's body. Even if he looks at another woman, he's still happy with you. It's a well-known fact that many supermodels are secretly displeased with some aspect of their bodies, and they obsess on this. They turn to plastic surgery. They go on starvation diets, when in fact, they need to eat a little. They need to leave it alone. You know, you gain eat a slice of pizza every now and then. There's more life than just kale 3 times a day. There are some unique situations or conditions that need to be addressed when we're talking about this. And one is that medical conditions like thyroid disorders or some medications may result in rapid weight gain. In these cases, women should not be held responsible for things that they can't control. For women, perhaps Harley's corollary explains what women should understand. Attractiveness is what you do with what you have. If he shows appreciation for your body, take him at his face value. Believe him that he does like you. And although maybe he was looking for a beauty queen, after he's been married a while and he knows that you're a good woman and he sees what else is available out there, oh, he's happy to take you, even if you gained a little weight or you have a few wrinkles. You're all right. I'm going to stop there because we are going to go into another subject. We'll pick up next week with domestic support. I hope you have a good week. It's that you stay safe and well, and that we can beat all these sicknesses that are going around. Good night. Have a safe evening.